Today I spoke to Timm Chiusano, and if you don't know him, he's got 1.4 million something followers across all his platforms, most notably for his vlogs that he does on TikTok. And today in the conversation, it was about progress. And it was a really interesting conversation because for someone as notable as he is and the success that he's had both in professionally and as a creator, you would think that he has his shit together. But actually, in his words, he has no idea what he's doing, but what he is doing is he's making progress. And every day he's getting a little bit better and he's moving a little bit further along his path. So listen to the podcast and hope you enjoy it. Conversation helps you uncover these things. You talk it through with lots of people. And then I remember this. The reason I say that is because that's where I was 5 years ago when I quit my career in hotels, that what I needed to do is talk to as many people as possible. And I did that for, oh God knows how many people, hundreds of people before lockdown happened.
Yeah.
And then it helped me figure out oh, this is the path. Like I ran hotels and now I have a marketing agency.
Yeah. It's funny. I actually feel the opposite right now.
Yeah,
it's like I need to just shut up and do the work.
Yeah, interesting.
And that's where I'm having, it's like, it feels like there's usefulness in saying yes to the things I'm saying yes to. But then at the same time, too, there's this lingering thought in the back of my head of like, I should just be sitting at my computer, building and making and trying and failing and repeating that as much as humanly possible all day long versus like trying to spend too much time. I was actually thinking about this this morning. One of the most dangerous phrases I feel like I heard on a consistent basis in corporate America was, we had a great conversation about blank. Where, especially because I'm just an anxious person by nature, and with the scale of the team that I had, I didn't say this as often. I don't know if often as I should have is the right way to put it, but I was very cautious for two reasons. One, how do I respond to that and be like, define that for me and what's going to happen as a result of that, versus like encouraging that type of thoughtfulness, because everyone's brain's going to work differently as well. So I feel like I'm somewhat on the other side of that, where even though most of the summer was spent traveling, being with family, all these amazing things that I needed, most of the anxiousness and the desire to get to the next phase kept getting rooted in get back to routine, get back into a space where you can be like, you're going to do this thing for 90 minutes and then you're going to have a hard stop, pencils down. What did you do? What did you learn? What's your next thing to do? And even if that means, cool, hard stop, go do laundry downstairs, hard stop, go pick up my daughter from school, it's that type of rigor. Yeah. It's gotten incrementally better. And this is really just week 2 because the summer was flying back and forth to Oregon several times, a lot of amazing opportunities, like going to a startup fest in Montreal and going to Texas for a couple different reasons. But I feel like I need the repetition at this point. And as somebody who's an introvert by nature, now that I don't have a team, it's almost like I want to be a bit more isolated too. It's like I really just want to get in the office, close the door, and not come out for like 2 weeks. And then be like, I don't know if this is the right thing, but this is what I'm doing. Like, this is what the next 6 months are going to look like. And everything gets treated the way that it got treated, which was under no circumstances am I not on my Monday 10 a.m. meeting because there's X that's on the line for that conversation with my team or whatever, and just get into that type of pattern. But that's kind of the rub in this, right? Is that you don't know, but also you can't just think it. You can't think through it through ever. You just need to get to the doing as well. So I give myself a very hard time about that. And then I try to remind myself, like, how much content have I made since then? How much progress have I made writing? All of these things. And there's both good and bad to it, but just not allowing myself to feel like, dude, you haven't done shit since you left. Because that thought does creep into your mind. And then how does that manifest itself into your own self-confidence and how you're showing up if you're trying to talk to the camera, if you're trying to do something, if you're trying to answer a question, not getting stuck into a corner based off of all the questions you're asking yourself about the purpose of that thing that you're doing that you might feel self-conscious about, etc. So it's an amazing conundrum to have, though, because if you can really sit with that and be okay with that and allow yourself to get through it and not have to go 1,000 miles an hour, but also make sure that you have enough momentum. It's a special place, I think, to flounder in, and I think is deserved and necessary for me to flounder in that right now. And we'll see. And then I get to decide how I make the most of the floundering.
Yeah. When you talk about doing the work and these bits of like getting things done and doing the reps, for you, what is that?
Right now,
What
it's
is the work?
It's a few different things.
Yeah.
One is the book, right? So 95% of it is completed, but that's first pass.
Yeah.
It's going to take a lot of back and forth with the editor. It's not going to hit bookshelves for another 11 months, year. September 2nd, 2025, I think is like the hit the shelves date. So there's that piece. Then it's what does the routine look like to make the most useful stuff and where does it go? And to me, I think that starts with the syllabus is, well, what is the stuff? And to me, that stuff is where I can be most helpful at scale because with all due respect to myself and my surroundings in my day-to-day, no one's going to give a shit about my POV or like a day in the life of a random stranger on the internet forever. So how can I be most useful? I know how I can be most useful, but it's like the book, and then in my head, it's this syllabus of entry-level 101 stuff for employees, how to write an email to your boss's boss without throwing up. Like, what are all of those listicle things? I've got 100 different cards in an organized system in my computer where I finally have taken this PowerPoint that I wrote, this Word document, because for 4 years, it was just making it up as I go, literally every single day, making it up as I go. Maybe sometimes there's a little bit of pre-planning or forward thought into why should I be making this piece of content and what is the timeliness of it. But I don't know. I still don't know on a day in and day out basis what I'm posting that day, and that's a problem. Yeah. If I build the syllabus the right way, so getting to do the work is like making sure the book is making as much progress on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis as possible. Writing the syllabus so I at least have this like core thing that I can keep going back to, and then figuring out, all right, is this, because I don't, like yesterday I sat down in my basement and I did a podcast and recorded it myself, and then I literally edited it in iMovie by myself and put it up through Megaphone. And was that better as a podcast? Should that have been a YouTube? Is there a better way to tell that story of how I had this awful day at work during my first real, week at work back in 2003 or whenever it was? Is that a better podcast? Is that better as a YouTube? Is that better as a short form? Should I have started with an article that maybe was a Substack that I linked to on LinkedIn? Should I have made something on LinkedIn? Should I have taken the cut down from the podcast and put that on LinkedIn? I made the cut down. I didn't post it anywhere.
Yeah.
Didn't like it. It was okay. I thought it was a decent soundbite. But then you start to think yourself into a corner about all of these things. And then you're like, well, where the hell did that story come from? Okay, yes, it makes sense. It's college football season. There was a loose tie in there from a timing perspective. You want a good story about a college football experience gone wrong in live sports production. This will be useful. You want a good story about fumbling out of the gate in your job. This will be useful. But is that the right one to do? Should I have saved that and tied it back to something else? I don't know. Yeah. Like, I don't know the answers to these things. It was arguably much easier before when everything was so chaotic. There was just go and do and capture and make it up the next morning. You got nothing to lose. Tell them about the day. Move on to the next thing. Yep. Now I feel like there's so much more that I can do, but I need to establish the syllabus. How does it come to life? What's the best flow? I've got one person that's helping me with editing just for YouTube, but everything else is still a solo act. So how do I figure all of that out? Like that's the doing.
Yeah. I got followers, but I think Jenny's got questions. I'm going to cut this into the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop mine for now, and then I'll come back at the end so that you guys continue this. But
Yeah.
I would like an intro at
We'll do an intro at the end. Do an intro at the end. We're already straight into this. Now, I love this line of thinking because this is my question in rebuttal to what you've just said is, why do you have to do that with a locked door on your own? Like, why can't other people help you figure that out? You know, like by talking to them, right, in those conversations. Why does it need to be Tim locking himself in his basement or his office and trying to figure out the syllabus on his own? What? Yeah.
There's not a good reason for that other than being in the position that I was in for my career in the corporate space. Ultimately, final decisions came down to me. So there's part of me that probably just defaults to, I've heard a decent amount. I feel like I know enough. It's time for me to just go make a decision. Mm-hmm. What are these roles going to be called? How is the thing going to be set up? What is the process going to be like? We're picking a direction and we're going. So there's that part of it. There's another part of it where I get and this is not a good reason, but this is the reason I get too anxious. It's like, all right, where's especially coming from a world in which it was start on time, end on time every 30 minutes throughout the course of a day, if not even smaller increments. What is the point? What are the next steps? What is the timeline? So having just like exploratory conversations on a consistent basis, my head has a hard time wrapping itself around that.
Yeah, interesting.
I know the use, and it's almost like, okay, cool, if I should be smart about opportunities to have good conversations with the right people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, too, there's the internet.
Yeah.
So part of the work can be just having the conversation by myself simply by digesting or general internet osmosis, and then also making keystrokes at the same time.
Yeah.
Because then there's also just the day-to-day work that's still necessary of, got more brain deal follow-ups to do. Yeah. How do I even start to respond in a coherent and consistent way to LinkedIn messages, other people that are still reaching out through my archaic website and like all of that stuff. The random little things that will pop up that are just like circumstantial. So there's not a, hey, this is why it has to be just me, other than I feel like it will help my brain to just have as much quiet time as possible to let that. And I've reserved so much of the quiet time since I left, either to write or to just kind of sit at the dinner table with my in-laws or whatever the situation might be and be present.
Yeah.
And I've definitely had some of it for myself since, but just not as much as I feel like I need to. This coming weekend, my wife and daughter are going out of town. They're going to be with, other friends at the school. It's kind of like a kids and mom's weekend away. And I'm already like, all right, what's on my calendar that I'm getting out of?
Yeah.
Because I want nothing other than go for a run in the morning. And then once I'm like reasonably, cleaned up and ready for the day, I'm not leaving the house, finish the book, see how much I can chip away. Cause the syllabus is a long syllabus too. Like I just did the framework of it. And there's like, all of the 101, 201, 301, 401 stuff. But then at the same time too, like I got to make a piece of content for the day. Like I need to make sure that the organic continues to be there on a consistent basis. And like this week is a great example. Today's 9/11.
Yeah.
I have far too many stories about that day.
Yeah.
A lot of things that I would like to say that I think should be heard on a day like this. I had it scheduled, I think, for Monday or Tuesday to come downtown. I was going to find the spot where I would come in the days after that, and I would literally just sit somewhere downtown across from the initial pile of rubble, and I would just watch. Yeah. And I would just sit there and I would stare at the thing and be like, the fuck is going on in the world right now? And literally just watch. Yeah. And I had it in my head how that could look and how I would do it. And I was scheduled, literally blocked off time. This is when I'm going to go shoot this thing. Something for a brand obligation that I already had on the table popped up, started to erode away at the time. All of a sudden, the commute time wasn't going to allow me enough time to get there and come back. Fell off the table. This morning, I'm like, I got another idea. Literally have a friend who who I knew since middle school, who lived across the street from where my house is. We didn't live there at the same time. He lived there in 2001, and he has stories of getting back from when everybody got kicked out of Manhattan and was like, everyone get out of here. We don't know what's going on. And clear day exactly like this. Still pieces of paper on fire landing, and this is 2.7 miles away from the World Trade Center, just floating around in the breeze, landing on the street. Yeah. And I had a way in my head to connect that to what is ultimately part of like what I think my purpose is these days, which is to try to help people be less stressed out in the workspace, like be nicer to each other. Like all the shenanigans and bullshit that I've seen and people that ask me questions that come from, it's pervasive, right? Like there's people with 3 million followers that do nothing but toxic workplace content. I want to help address that. So like I had a way in my head to tie the things together. I don't have that. Maybe when I get home, I can like sit out on my stoop. So it's like the plotting, but then there's also the, how do I reconstruct the engine so that there's no question what I'm going to post tomorrow. There's no question what I'm going to post next Tuesday. If it's September 11th right now, I should, within the next couple of weeks, have some fun ideas for Halloween that I'm already starting to like plan out. Yeah. Right? Like that's part of my job now, kind of. So it's, how can I just get smarter at all of that and not get sucked in this vortex of like, let me plan for what's going to happen down the road. Oh shit, it's 4:00. I don't know what I'm posting today. I have to post something today because I got a brand piece coming up. And I don't want to just be that like, here's more and more like ad content, even if I feel like the ad content is as good as it could be, or it's additive, or it offers something of value, etc. And it's an interesting vortex to be stuck in.
Yeah, it's real interesting listening to you speak about this because like, I mean, I don't know if Joni can pick up what I'm thinking, but like, as a leader of like 30-something creatives, it's like a very similar one-on-one conversation I have with all of them. Yeah. Because I'm not a creative at heart, like in the sense of content. And yeah, obviously there's parts of my being that's creative, but there's this, this happened a week or two ago with you, the same conversation of like, Joni's like workload and like planning and like, where do I go next? I just got to get this thing sorted in which direction I go. And she had all these ideas, and then we just start to unpack them. And through conversation with me, which doesn't look at it the way she does and looks at it quite, what's the word I'm looking for? But like quite objectively different to her, we're able to like give her a lot of clarity of like what's the next steps. And so that's why I was kind of asking is most of my job outside of sales and the business is talking to my creative team and helping them get through that. Like they've got all the answers, but helping them just go their next step because they can't, because they go in this loop of where they are, and they could probably eventually get through. Of course, they're very smart people, but there's like an unlock that they get all the way up until that point where before they come and see me or before I like intervene, they start going into these anxious spirals. Yep, and that's all I was wondering. It's like, you're outside of the system of corporate world America that gave you a system to be inside of, that had checks and balances and people there and whatever it was in terms of its system. But now you're on your own system. What is your checks and balances for yourself that stops your creative brain from doing the thing that creative brains do? Because that's why they're so good. They think through things so differently to other people. How does Timm get out of that? Like, what do you need to do? Or is that your wife, or do you have other people in your world that help you pull you out of that space, or is it still something you're trying to uncover?
I am still trying to uncover it. I really think it's just on me. Yeah. Like I just got to get to, all right, cool. Don't overthink. How do I address? I mean, silly things. Like when I say it out loud, I know it's silly, but it's also, especially if you're in the creative space, you know how perplexing this can be and how potentially debilitating it can be too. I want to answer as many questions. I get amazing questions from all corners of life. New dad, first time manager. How do I get noticed by a company if I'm 21 and I just graduated? How do I battle back against ageism when I'm 55 and I'm working with a whole bunch of 25-year-olds and they don't take me seriously? You connected with the younger audience seemingly. How do I... All these amazing things. It's like so much content is already being teed up. But then it's like I struggle with just like answering it directly unless I'm doing some sort of just Instagram stories because I know it's gone in 24 hours. Then I can treat it like a one-on-one FaceTime. But like, how do I what is... So to me, the answer of getting out of your own way is almost... It's this pencils down mentality that I'm trying to get back to. It was so helpful in the corporate space where it was like, it doesn't have to be perfect by this date, but you just have to have your pencils down. One of the best performing pieces of content that I've had since I left was in my head forever. Something I want to do, and I honestly didn't even know that it performed well because I won't open TikTok other than to post, and I haven't done so since Easter.
Okay.
I open it up as quickly as I can and I hit the plus button, and then I upload and then I shut it off like I can't. And I'm getting to that place with Instagram now, and I don't know if this is healthy, but like that's what I'm doing. I just don't want to know any kind of performance. I just want to chuck things and then run away.
Yeah.
And I remember shooting this piece that did well, at least based on feedback, and had a lot of people that reached out and was like, hey, I'd love that one where you're sitting in the chairs. And I remember running around my house shooting it, and I'm like, this is like no one else was in the house. I still get self-conscious around my wife and my daughter shooting stuff as odd as that may sound. And I was frustrated. I'm like, this is taking too long. And then I had to be like, this is not taking very long. This is like maybe 20 minutes, dude. Like this is... But I'm like, it's getting late and I'm going to eat later. And like all of those things that send anybody into a bit of a spiral.
Yeah.
And so to me, that like getting out of it is just A, giving yourself some grace.
Yep.
B, creating confines of the same as kids. It's like, here are the amount of crayons that you have. Here's your piece of paper.
Yep.
We're not going to do this for the next 4 weeks.
Yeah.
This is afternoon recess.
Yep.
Go make something.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm kind of closer.
Cool.
And there's some pieces that are coming together. I feel like I had this breakthrough, and this is like really nerdy into the creative side of things. Where Mr. Rogers meets corporate America tutorials is like, that's my goal and direction.
Yeah.
And forever I had this thing in my head where a drone flies down the street and I poke my head out of the door and I'm like, hey, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about whatever the topic is. I had Kelly film some stuff. She's never flown a drone before. It was good. I mean, for somebody that never flew a drone before, it was quite good.
Yeah.
Had a real guy, real drone person come over and shoot some stuff. It was like, this is it.
Yeah.
Shot like try to be smart. Let me wear 3 different things so that I can mix it up a little bit. And then we got even more creative. And Kelly actually had the idea. She's like, well, can it like fly backwards out of the window in your office? So it's like you come back in the door and it looks incredible. And but he crashed the drone after the second attempt.
Oh.
It was very difficult. He was like flying backwards and he was like looking up at the window. And so nothing on him whatsoever. And plus, I think it would not have broken had I not already broken it and tried to glue it back together. Oh. Yeah. So I do that. And I'm like, this is amazing. Now this is like the intro and I can just bookend the stuff.
Yeah.
But then it's like, well, the sunlight's a certain way. So if I don't shoot it in between these hours, it's going to look super goofy.
Yeah.
And I only have this one shot in this one outfit because it crashed afterward. So it's like I've got intro, but then I take off the hoodie, and that's fine because I'm wearing the same pants. But if I go from this outfit to then sitting in something completely different, like how weird is that?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you've got a whole new set of problems to try to fix. Then I'm like, well, for the backyard, if I can't do that in the front, if I put a tripod on the pergola in the backyard, I can then shoot into my office window and I can talk to the camera in front of me, but then have this interesting POV coming in from outside, which gives it a new perspective and could potentially hook people's attention in a different way. Yeah. But I'm like, well, there's a tripod on top of a pergola. It's got slats in it. So like, and once it's windy out, it's going to fall over. And so I actually stopped at B&H on my way here to be like, what do you guys have for this? And the guy's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, you're trying to install a permanent tripod on a pergola in your backyard. He's like, everything's going to rust. I'm like, well, it doesn't. He's like, well, what do you got with clamps? And so I think I got something, but it's the incremental progress that I have to give myself credit for. And as much as I don't want to say that out loud, for the purpose of anybody listening that's like, well, dude, just don't make us bummed out. Like, we're never going to. The incremental progress is where it's at.
Yeah. Cool.
Progress always beats perfection.
Yeah.
I got that shot. The thing that I said was always in my head, I extracted it. Yeah. That's a win. Yeah. I see how it comes together. That's a win. Is it 100% there yet? No. Have I made at least a couple of pieces of content based on that premise? Yes. That's a win. Cool. How do I make it repeatable? What is the best stuff to do there? How does that Venn diagram with the syllabus? Yeah. So it's like starting to see those things come together, which kind of goes back to the just wanting to lock myself in a room, because if it's like, cool syllabus, ooh, I've got this idea. Let me go make a terrible version of that just to experiment and extract it from my brain. Yeah. Pencils down. Yeah. Take a look. Okay, cool. What's next? Back to the syllabus, keep building that and keep experimenting. And then at some point be like, all right, that goes in my back pocket. Not getting so excited. You're like, cool, I'm going to go post that right now. No, wait. Like, that's an evergreen piece. And so trying to get like smarter about those things too. And at least short term, look, it would be amazing. And I've had some incredibly talented people that are like, I want to help. I get blind DMs from people that are like, I just fixed this thumbnail for you. Because my thumbnails and my titles on YouTube suck. I do it in the reverse order. I will go make a PowerPoint, shoot the thing, send it to my editor that's doing the long form stuff for me, get it back, and then I'll make the thumbnail, which I do as a screen grab of one of the first frames in PowerPoint that I lay text over that I know doesn't pop well. And I know, and I've been told a million times, that scales to shit when you see it on a mobile device. Yeah. And I have people that are literally sending me, I made you a new thumbnail for this thing. Yeah. I did a podcast with Ryan Holiday 3 weeks ago. Cool. Amazing experience. Yeah. Through that, I met somebody that is prolific in the space of YouTube content creation, etc. Love to work with me, to see a lot of potential here, etc. It's a cost. And as it should be. Like, who's going to do all that work for free? But then I go back to like, okay, I just walked away from a pretty substantial ongoing paycheck that was like clockwork. Things are going well. Like, we're fine for now. Yeah. But do I just invest and be like, cool, this is just the cost to start this up? Because to the broader question, you could almost go and hire that one person to do that thing that's like, I saw your syllabus, I know thumbnails and titles. Here is your next 10 pieces. Yep. Let me give you a loose outline. Here's the shooting schedule. Go. Yep. A, I don't know if I'm ready for that. Mm-hmm. B, I don't know if that's the best investment in the short term. And what of that should I be doing myself, knowing what needs to come together? And then you can spiral just in that alone of like, well, I'm stuck here thinking about whether or not I should do that, so I'm not actually doing it myself, which would make me then more guilty of actually taking the person up on it because I'm outsourcing it and paying it for somebody. But is that the right place for my money to be going? Oh shit, I just spent a half hour thinking about this. It's 3:00. What am I posting today?
I love the live spiral. It's great. But you know what I think I like the most about your answer there to my question, which I don't even know if you realized that you answered it, was that your answer to it is progress. Like, think about progress. And I actually think that's quite profound because I know for a lot of my team, it's a thing they struggle with is to look back. And recently we've been talking as a team about the concept of the gap and the gain and how they struggle. They always sit in the gap and they can't look at the gain and look where they've come from. And so I think that progress is a good spot because as long you spiral more if you can't see progress.
Yeah.
You know, if you're only seeing the gap and also can't get clarity.
Yep.
So I like that because I think, so most people who watch this podcast, most of our regular viewers are other creators and small business owners of this particular podcast. And I know that they all struggle the same way.
Yep.
They all struggle with like the perfection of getting the thing right, or like the I saw Claire laughing about when you're talking about setting up all the cameras and everything, because it's like it resonates so much with these guys and like everyone that we know actually in the creative world, trying to get it perfect. But there is, as you mentioned, there is no way to really get it perfect except for progress.
Yep.
So I like that. That I think is a great answer, because my team struggles with that like a lot. Just as young creatives, they struggle with the understanding that one day, you know, they're 20 something, one day when they're 40 something, but they've been doing 20 years of practice. They're going to be, they're insane now. Imagine in 20 years from now, you know, that progress piece. So I really I really want to hold on to that and make sure that people clip this, you know, like see that piece of progress. So that's the thing I always say to everyone, like, we're never going to get this right first go.
Yeah.
But if we do 1,000 of these, the 1,000th one will be a lot better than the first one.
Totally.
Yeah. We like jumped straight into conversation, and one thing I wanted to ask to start this conversation is I wanted to just go back a little bit and ask a question around like when you started making content in your corporate career. First of all, where was it? Was it LinkedIn first? Was it TikTok first? Like, where did you first start actually like in a public sphere putting content out? And then two, like, what was the response from everyone else inside your job?
It depends on how you want to define content creation, putting it out there. I mean, I made one YouTube video in 2008, but I saw YouTube then as almost like Dropbox.
Yep. Okay.
Where it's like, if I publish this thing on this site, I can send my friends a link to it.
Yeah.
It is by no means a place where somebody is going to watch something and then want to engage with it, nor am I in the headspace of, let me do this and see how I can like truly broadcast myself as it was being, you know, marketed at the time. Still true to this day. And then there's, you know, as a 46-year-old dude, like when Instagram came out, pretty quick to download it. It was like, cool. This is a photo first way to instantly send a telegram to people.
Yeah.
Straightforward. Love Twitter out of the gate too.
Yep.
This is fun. I remember there was somebody who was on CNN at the time that was using it a ton in their show. And I was in a shared office when I was working at ESPN, and there was a TV on almost as like white noise because it was a shared office. And I remember being like, this is so smart. Leaned into that for a minute. You know, again, back 2009, I want to say. Instagram was the one consistent place, but I really just looked at that as this is friends and family. This is an expanded version of sending cards in the mail. I was never a Facebook guy. I was never a MySpace guy, but Instagram felt like, and it is a very quick, instant gratification type of platform too. Around 2018, maybe 17, I started to do like protein bar and protein product reviews for my own. Just I enjoyed doing it. And I've got some stuff that were like, I'll look back, I'm like, this is like a 3-minute long thing of me sitting there by myself in my office in 2017 reviewing this low-calorie ranch dressing that I never actually put anywhere, but I was literally just doing it for my own entertainment because I enjoyed it. I started to put a couple, then I started to get a little bit, quote-unquote, better of them. It's funny, I bet for anybody, and I will happily say this out loud and people can call me out on it, there are protein bar reviews from early 2019 that I believe are just on my Instagram page that are very similar to Keith Lee food reviews. Because I would shoot it in 16:9. And the only way for me to make it more engaging for my own, you know, just is this interesting, was to crop and to just keep cutting around that one shot. And it's like me sitting in my office by myself, and y'all have been in my office, and like it's a big, beautiful space. And I just like lean back, and it was like just me and the camera, and it was fun and it was loose, and I didn't care. And I would just do these like abstract, almost too close crops. And it's not difficult to kind of quote unquote trick the audience to think that like there's multiple cameras in the room or this is like a lot fancier. And it was literally like shoot it for 60 seconds, put it in an iMovie, crop it a handful of times so that it looked like there were several cuts in it. Intentionally bad intro and outro graphics just to have fun and be self-deprecating.
Yep.
Then TikTok.
Yeah.
Because the protein bar, at some point, someone's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. I'm just having fun and I really like protein bars. And I've got a protein bar of the month subscription and like I get to try a lot of these things. So it's just kind of fun to do.
Yeah.
And after like maybe 4 or 5 people were kind of like, what are you doing? And like, how long do those take you? Like once I heard the question, how long do those take you? Especially with a bit of like a head tilt.
Yeah.
Then I was like, I'm shutting it down.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't want to deal with that. Like,
Yeah.
that's fine. It literally takes me 3 minutes between setting it up, shooting it, and then so maybe 7 minutes after I would do 4 or 5 cuts in it, which if you know iMovie, like it's pretty straightforward. You can literally turn that around in just a matter of a handful of minutes.
Yep.
But I'm like, I just don't want to deal with it. And then I just stopped making stuff altogether. TikTok meant nobody knew who I was.
Yeah. Okay.
No, didn't have to care. To even convince people to download the app in the first place, let alone like follow somebody or give me any kind of attention.
Yeah.
Amazing creative freedom to just go and be as weird and do whatever I wanted with 0 ramifications because I didn't have anything to lose. And it was good work perspective as well. Quick turnaround, low budget with a department that focuses on doing that for small businesses at scale. Why would I not want to know what this latest technology is that people are carrying around in their pockets where they can go shoot something, edit it, and then put it in a public space within one workflow? I need to be ahead of this for my producers' long-term career healthiness. Like I need to know where this is going, what's the technology, and how could it impact what we're doing? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, where did 1,000 people come from? And it's like, oh my God, there's as many people here as fill Madison Square Garden, which is like 18,000. Yeah. And then I blinked and now I'm sitting here with you and I'm not 100% sure what happened between then and now.
Yeah.
But I got sucked into some sort of vortex and I just kept shooting things and then editing them at 5 o'clock in the morning and making up voiceovers off the top of my head. And I somehow blew up my entire world in the process.
I love that. I love that. I was going to follow up with that. Like you talked about obviously with the protein bars, like people started to question it.
Yep.
At which point did they start questioning TikTok? Because at some point, obviously, they found out about it.
Yep.
But like, what was that moment like for you?
Luckily, it got big before it got known, if that makes sense. Where people that would discover it within my own world would have been like the last in on it, or like the latecomers. I mean, I had some like I have some OG people that I knew, intimately. They were like, no, I've been there since the get-go. It's funny. Somebody that I work with, one of my favorite people who've ever worked with, her daughter was number 7 from a follower perspective and would bring that up often. It was like, hey, I think your boss is on TikTok kind of thing. But for the most part, like the people that would have had anything to say were like, dude, where did you get 250,000 followers on TikTok from? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
And so then people wouldn't just jump into like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It was more like, what did you do? Yeah. And how did it get to this place? Which was amazing because then I could be like, I don't know, but I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And kind of too late now. So I'll just be like, cool, thumbs up and keep going on my merry way and pretend like the conversation kind of happened. But like train's already left the station.
Yeah.
And at that point it was train had already left the station. And I'd already done enough. It was almost like one of those, you do the thing, and if you do it with the right intentions, it can create enough critical mass where it's almost impossible or becomes very difficult to push back on it.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, once they noticed, there were a couple 100,000 people already there. a base of positive, helpful, relatively helpful, moderately inspiring stuff that was kind of hard. If it was a series of why my boss sucks or
Of course.
things that would be, negative or condescending or, then I'm sure it would have been a different conversation. But it was like, oh, you built an audience around just being a goofy version of who you are as a human being.
Yeah.
And shedding a little bit of light on what it looks like to have the career and a family and do all the things. And then it was almost, I wouldn't say too big to fail, but it was almost like there's not much we can do about it other than be like, wow, can't believe you were doing that. And we had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because it's what I find with a lot of people we work with or people we know. It's the same thing. There's a critical mass point which beforehand everyone's almost either telling you off or laughing at you or making fun of you at your expense. Like my family were doing that to me when we started this journey. Like, what is this kid doing? Like he's giving up this great career in hotels to do this weird thing that he's doing. He's posting on LinkedIn thinking he's, I don't know. And then there's this critical mass point where everyone's, like you said, is how did you do that? Like, how did you get to that piece? And the conversation starts to change. And we try to tell this to a lot of people we meet that, like, the perseverance or that progress path that you're on, there's a point. You don't know where it is. You don't know how many bicep curls to get the biceps, but at some point you flex in the mirror, you're like, oh, they're there.
Yeah.
And then everyone catches on. So that's quite interesting. Like, you had quite a unique opportunity with TikTok that, I mean, at this point in time, probably no one has the same, but there will be another social media or there'll be another platform or something for people to jump onto.
Yep.
Tell me about the LinkedIn space, because you obviously do a lot on there as well. Did that start around the same time? Was that quite early we started to build out, or did it build from TikTok?
I would actually say I'm terrible with LinkedIn, and I was terrible throughout that entire because TikTok was a safe space because nobody else was there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
LinkedIn is where everybody was.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Like, there's some probably listen and be like, everybody was there. If you are in your 40s and you worked for a large company, everybody that you knew and that you worked with was on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And so I was like, keep me away from that.
Got it.
I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I don't want, and as much as I should have been engaged, it was like, I'm either helping push a narrative that I don't know is actually helping other than just creating more noise here. And I don't want to just like 5 other people have already reposted that piece of company content. Mm-hmm. Am I going to actually help with that? And how could I say it differently that's going to be on brand for who I am as a human being, and then also be additive to that conversation versus just spamming? And LinkedIn feed can be super spammy.
Yeah.
So I stayed away. I started to dabble back into it a little bit once I felt, and this is really just within the last year, okay, cool, I've kind of established enough credibility outside where I can speak as myself and not really worry about broader ramifications. And also not feel like I just have to say, hey, come meet us at this junket, or like, aren't you excited to go see so-and-so talk at this thing? Not that I didn't believe those things, but it was like, there doesn't need to be another voice to the pile. I want to be way more active in that space. I'm trying to wrap my head around the new like video only feed that's popped up in the app. Like, where's that even coming from? How are they aggregating those things? What makes the most sense to put there? Is, are articles and posts going to be more impactful? Should I just take what I'm doing and, cut a different version of that and put it there? Kind of goes back to the putting yourself into that spiral of overthinking the thing itself. But then it's also, it's such a good question because it's such a awkward space of there being content police without there being content police. And what I mean by that is, talking about your salary in a public capacity on LinkedIn is kind of that's not a cool thing to do. When there's a large audience that wants more people to do that, there's also an equally large audience. It's like, dude, shut the fuck up. You're going to blow up these other people's spots. You're going to put the company in a weird position. You're going to have people looking at coworkers differently. But then you hear the other, they're like, I have no idea what is out there. I have no idea. Like, I see headlines of publicly traded companies, I see entrepreneurs, but I have no idea what it means to be a director. Like, I kind of have these broader like things in my head. And then also that potential perspective of, oh, that's like an elite pile over there. When I would like to change all of those conversations to be like, there should be more transparency. You should know what LTI is, because everybody that's chasing the fancy business card versus the opportunity could be overlooking the fact that go to the boring place that has LTI if that's something that you're interested in because you see the upside in the long term. And that's just about transparency and education. And especially at the end of the day, when we're talking about publicly traded companies that have CEOs that make exorbitant amounts of money. In addition to putting that into some sort of broader calibration, when I thought about this a million times over, and I'm somewhat disappointed in myself for talking about it publicly to a little bit, because I know that it would cause a ruckus. I didn't think about it super deeply in regards to the ruckus it would cause at work. But I was aware. Like, I know that all of a sudden the next day it's going to be a distraction, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, too, they're choosing to let it be a distraction. And that's, but at the same time, too, am I aware that it's going to be a distraction, right? That's its own spiral. But then, and I think this is the most like interesting part of it that can give broader context, is between the potential view of, there being this elite aspect of things. What does having a career in the corporate space mean? But then how does that fit into the broader American economic system? When I realized that my total compensation on during its best years was still less than the minimum salary for a year one NFL, NBA, NHL player, I was like, okay, when I see the comments, especially if it was something where I would like show up at a fancy event and I'm wearing a suit and it kind of has that pomp and circumstance, and you see the word pretentious, pop up a couple times here and there. And I want to, and I'm like, if I get it, I understand. But at the same time too, there are left-handed pitchers that have like 2 or 3 decent years that make 10 times more than I do. And you're like, cool, I would love to get a beer with that dude. Just because I wear a suit and tie, or just because anybody in the space wears a suit and tie and does these things, doesn't mean that all of a sudden they're shitty people, but these other people are. So like, there's so much to that conversation. So back to like the question of LinkedIn and like what to do, it almost goes back to, how do I shoot outside my window or the drone down the street so that I can almost diffuse everything out at the jump and be like, come on in. Today we're going to talk about how to deal with salary negotiations, right? Because there's so much of this content that's out there. This is how you ask for a raise. This is how you do blah, 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 blah. And it's been really difficult for me to not just stitch every single piece of that and be like, half of this was right. None of this was right. 90% of this was right. Whatever. At least based on my experience, where I'm like, this has 3 million views on it. That's the potential for 3 million people to run into a buzzsaw if they take this and they're like, cool, I'm going to shut my laptop at 5 o'clock. There's no consequences because I just gave them a good zinger of a line on the way out from that. You should protect your space. You should have your boundaries. But I'm still trying to sort that. Like, LinkedIn, I think, has some of the best potential from a helpfulness perspective, from a brand perspective, from a just usefulness perspective, almost more so than any other platform, but it's still super murky in the short term.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's real interesting your conversation around transparency too. Like, it's a big thing for me as well as a employer, and also just as trying to grow this business. But I wanted to ask, like, what do you think transparency around pay and salary and incentives and stuff does? Like, what's the positive part of the transparency piece?
I think it gives more opportunity to understand what's possible. I think it gives more, especially when I see so many getting into the workforce, large concern around I'm going to make the wrong decision out of the gate. And that's going to put me on a path where I don't like what I do, or I'm not doing cool stuff. And cool stuff equates to financial security in some regard because it's big and it's fancy, and that must point towards, just being in a good spot. Where in a lot of cases, that could mean that you're stuck in a cog of a wheel and you're focused on, is this the right purple for this brand piece over and over and over and over and over again? But it's for this cool brand, so therefore this is cool and this is on the right path, right? When people aren't even aware of things like what a long-term incentive package could be, at face value, made no sense whatsoever that I would leave ESPN to go to Time Warner Cable. That seemed like career suicide for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah.
Plus, dude, go take a back seat on the cool bus.
Yeah.
You're walking away from an at ESPN email address where you're already at a director level and you're working with some of the biggest brands on the planet around the coolest things that God knows how many people coming out of school and going through would be like, I get to work on Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
And every auto manufacturer on the planet that wants some sort of piece of that, to go work for the cable company, to stand up a production and creative services department to focus on small businesses and local auto dealers. I wasn't smart enough at the time to be like, cool, they've got a long-term, at least like, I know my dad had a somewhat similar career path and like was very smart to put those types of bugs in my ear.
Yeah.
So that's one. I think just general awareness of like, how is it structured?
Yeah.
And if the number gets your attention so that you start to become more aware, I want to be able to pull people out of the conversation of how do I go from 50,000 to 55,000? And I saw this amazing video the other day where somebody was like making that comparison. They're like, if you don't negotiate up over a 10-year period, if these two people start out the same way, this other person is making more. I'm like, and I'm racking my head. I'm like, they're right. But the huge but, if for some reason you get in the door and they're like, the person was kind of a pain in the ass going through this, and then you might have that like saddled to you just a little bit going through, the person that walked in is like, I'm cool with this because I know that $5,000 is probably being made up for in these free services that I get as part of the package, or I just want to get my ass in the door and do the work. And then they jump over that other person that spent a week negotiating the extra $5,000. Neither one of those is right. But the awareness that not just being like, I need to stand my ground, I need to ask for more money, etc. I just want to open that aperture so that it's not a very linear conversation about here are the things you do, especially because, and this is with all due respect to people that are making amazing content, that are doing a ton of research, but in a lot of cases, and this goes back to the syllabus, they haven't spent 20 years underneath the hood.
Yeah.
And if I just come out and I start stitching all of these pieces and say, here, I'm just an asshole that's telling other people why they're wrong. Yeah. And I could shut down an audience super quick that way. Or I could get the bad clicks where it's just like, it's almost, you're almost watching like train wreck type of entertainment because people are just like, oh, he's just going to be mean about this topic now. Yeah. I don't want to do that. So it's almost like I need to go find that back door with the Mr. Rogers piece. But I think that there's so much. If it was, here's how to make $10 million in a year doing blank, blank, and blank. Even that, saying that out loud, it's like, okay, like what do you got? Is there something reasonable there? But to be able to talk about how some companies structure their compensation plans, how you can be more aware of what's possible further up the ladder, how it's all of those things too, where it's like you get into the workforce and you're like, I had no idea a department like that existed.
Yeah.
Wait, this is a financial company. There's a huge marketing department over here. Wait a minute, this is a marketing company. There's a giant finance team over here, right? You think there are all of these lines. It's like, I want to demystify all of that, create transparency, and get people to think in levels of like, well, what do I want to go do and chase? And then just let me give you at least storytelling and perspective and clarity, because I'm not chasing yachts in private planes. Like, I just want to be able to sustain what I've been doing, and I'm good. If there was if I felt like, and I don't know that that's people can judge me for however they like against that, but I do feel at least a bit more comfortable being like, I'm not here to try to extract dollars from everybody's pocket so that I can be like, cool, let's go let's go hang out on the yacht.
Yeah.
If I can order takeout sushi whenever I please and not have to, worry about paying my kids' tuition, I'm good.
Yeah.
And if it means that there's some awkward conversations between here and there, because there is more of an emphasis on transparency, there is more of an emphasis on how does all of this work, then I don't know that it's the right answer, but I think it's worth at least dipping my toe in that water and seeing what type of impact it could have.
Cool. I love it. For me, I've always been big on transparency. I always think there's a positive spin on it. I don't think withholding information from people is ever great. Like in our company, everyone's salary is open to everyone in the P&L and the bank accounts. Like everyone can see everything. They can see whenever I spend money that maybe wasn't in the budget or anything, but they can also see each other's. And when people first start, they'll come out of like some corporate role or some bigger agency or things like that, and they'll come in and it takes them a good few months to wrap their head around like, why can everyone see my salary? Like, I don't understand this. But then like within a few months, they realize that like the conversations have shifted around pay. Like it's a different thing. It's like, oh, I want to get paid as much as that guy. He or she is doing this. I need to learn how to do those things because that's how I get to that next level and grow. And then we still have some conversations around like, especially with the newer people about what that looks like. But I just think that's part of the growth and development. The people who've been here longest with us, they get it. Like, they get it now. They've learned and they've developed. And then the other thing about like what options are available, I really love that conversation about like, the finance department inside the marketing company. Like, oh, I didn't realize this was a thing. Like I come from a place in New Zealand, in Auckland it's South Auckland. It's quite a poor neighborhood. And like my family's like, we're pretty poor. Like we grew up pretty poor. And a lot of my family have pretty like either blue collar jobs or just like basic service-based jobs. Like a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them. And so a lot of my young nephews and nieces come up through school going, oh, I'm probably just going to be a laborer or go get a job at the local supermarket or something like that. And they don't really realize like what else is out there, what else is possible. And I was having a conversation with one of my young nephews and I was like trying to just open his mind a little bit. And I was like, what's something that you love doing? Like, what's the thing that you're just so excited about? And he's like, oh, well, I don't know. I love playing video games. I was like, why don't you get a job in video games? He's like, oh, I'm not that good. Like, I can't play video games. I was like, do you think that like esports, like that's the only job in that world? Like, you think about the esports events, like someone's got to run them. Like there's someone's got to market them. Like there's so much to it. And the penny dropped, you could see the penny drop in his head. And he was like 17 at the time. And he was just like, wait, like of course someone's got to do all this stuff. But he just would never have fathomed. He's just like, oh, to get into gaming, you either have to make games or play them really well. But even, I was telling him, I was like, even making games, I was like, that's just like any other business. There's all the departments. Everything. Like HR, finance, whatever it is, they're all involved in it. And so I love, like, we've got another nephew of mine who's with us now. He's doing an internship. And he's just turned 18. And he's the same. Like, his mind's just been blown. Like, you guys get paid for this? Like, It's like, well, someone has to. And he's like, oh, yeah, I just never thought about it. I guess brands were just on TikTok. Or brands are on Instagram. So I really love that, like, transparency piece of, like, these are options. Like, the way I think about it, especially for, like, my community. So my father's from a place called the Cook Islands, which is in the Pacific Ocean. And, like, Pacifica people, like, they don't think, like, because we're just stoked, like, because they're immigrants to New Zealand, so they're just stoked to be there doing whatever. But the way we talk about it a lot is, like, the blueprints. Like, we've got to, those of us who are Pacifica have done other things, need to show them our blueprint for what we did, or like our roadmap. And so that transparency and like talk, and I think pay is a big part of it because it makes it real tangible to be like, wow, you got paid that to do that. And I think that's a big piece for me. I'm gonna move in because I realize it's already like 2:15. So I want to move into where now, but more about like money. Like, you publicly talked about a pretty sizable salary or like at least package that you're getting, right? In the high six figures.
Yep.
And you walked away from high six figures of potential, the LTI stuff, right? So that's a lot to replace.
Yeah.
Where are you at in that journey, and where's like the path forward? Like, how are you thinking about it? Because currently from your content, all I see is like brand deals and book writing. And is that enough? Do you think it's going to be enough? Is that why you had the confidence to leave? Like, what can you talk to that?
Short answer is, it's funny. I'm trying super hard to not focus too much on that. I feel like if I start to chase dollars, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
And that'll be the quickest path to me being too anxious, too quick to say yes or no to things based off of what dollars might be attached to them, right? That could have impacted whether or not I said yes to this. Be like, sorry, I got to, am I getting paid for this? No. All right, I'm not doing it, right? I don't want to make decisions like that. There's the book. There's the brand deals. There's also what I had already done over the past 10 years, right? So savings is a very like blanket way to state it, but I've been in my house for a long time, right? Like that was an investment that I made 13 years ago. So like from a cost perspective, we have a high burn rate, as they say, but only because of the city. Like there's no like the extravagance is relative and people can judge it for what they want. But like, as far as I'm concerned, extravagance is take out sushi when I want to, not having to worry too much about, can I go buy another tripod to potentially fumble around with, like that kind of stuff. And as long as I can continue to afford my mortgage and my kids' tuition, like I'm good. We stay at my in-laws' house when we go visit my in-laws out west. We try to be as smart as possible, and also enjoy life, knowing that we could die at any moment. So like, don't get too antsy about like, well, shit, what does this mean for when I'm 75? I know I need to be smart about that, but I feel like if I get too hung up on it, I'm screwed in the short term. There's what I did to try to help figure this out, and I definitely did not have it figured out 90 days in or however long it's been now, because I spent so much time unwinding myself from the company in what I thought was the most appropriate way, is I made this pyramid of value that I bring to the table. And at the top was the thing that I can sell probably the least amount of, but probably has the highest price tag. And that's executive coaching, executive onboarding training, things where I could be brought into, and I'm certified in something called the Energy Leadership Index, which basically means I can quantify someone's attitudinal skill set and give a broader assessment in regards to their emotional intelligence. Have an actual certification for that. That's something that, depending on the circle that I get into, I could probably charge a crap ton of money for, but there's also not a huge population of people that have that need, want that need, or they would pay, the upper fees for that kind of stuff. At the bottom of that pyramid is the biggest audience for the thing that I should be doing for free. Helpful career content at scale. The things that should just be more accessible, where people are like, nobody taught me how to write a resume, nobody taught me how to write a cover letter, nobody taught me how to deal with HR, nobody taught me how to manage my emails, like those types of things that I just know and goes back to the syllabus. So how do I just do that? Because I like doing it. I don't want to have to monetize that type of stuff for the sake of building this, replicating my salary. And then there's all of the things in between. So yes, there's brand deals, but then there's brand consulting, right? Smaller brewery that's in my neighborhood, somebody that I've known since he opened the doors. We're kind of stuck. We're not 100% what to do here. I'm not starting my own creative agency, but I can be like, cool, like what is that? What do you need? 2 hours a week, an hour every other week? What do you need? Let's talk about what good looks like there. I don't know what my rate card is for that. Sure, this sounds reasonable. Plus I can build a case study with it. Cool. Got my first executive coaching gig, probably undercharging for that service. Let me build a case study with it. Cool. I've been really lucky that some of the brand stuff has been things that nobody will ever see unless they're part of like a specific entity or a certain company, where the thought leadership is really kind of like the value that I bring to the table. And then there's other things too, where I'm like, okay, there are ways that I can be helpful as it relates to team building exercises, offsites, things along those lines. But I don't want to come up with like a rate card and a package. I'm sitting on an email that I need to get back to, where through this random set of circumstances, I came across somebody that I was neighbors with God knows how long ago, is now super high up at a company, is looking for team building, and I don't know. I'm sure at some point it's going to be like, well, what's your rate for this? Mm-hmm. And I'm okay to say right now, I do not know. Yeah. Let's have a conversation about like what good looks like for you. And if we can meet in the middle, amazing. Mm. So yes, brand deals and book, is that good forever? No. Should I come up with some sort of, hey, buy this program, I'm making this up, $50, you get an hour a month in a group session to talk through this, almost build a little cohort type of package deals that I'm sure I could do quite well at. Yeah. And I know I could help a lot of people, but is that the right thing to do? Yeah. How much of a shelf life might that have? Mm. So right now, my focus is, how good are we good in the short term? Yeah. Am I okay with the fact that I don't 100% know where this is going? And can I just lean into, if I can figure out how to extract the value that I have based on what my resume had, like not necessarily just what I can do for a brand or what the last, branded content piece would bring up or what the last book deal was, just deliver value at scale. Mm-hmm. Be okay screwing that up in the process. That's all I can do for now. If I would have had this perfectly modeled out, I don't think I would have left my job the right way. And even if I, caused a bit of a ruckus by talking about my salary after leaving the job, I am super confident with how I handled that situation all the way up to walking out the door on the last day on June 20th. Yeah. And if my error since then is being too transparent at a company that has a public CEO whose salary is already out there in public discussion, I'm kind of okay with that. I do feel bad about the disruption that it would cause, like in the water coolers and like that kind of stuff. But the answer to the question is, it's going to have to be all of these little things. Yeah. I have no idea if I'm ever going to be able to monetize the podcast that I'm doing. Yeah. I read a stat the other day. It's like trying to get into the NBA at this point. Yeah. But I know the value that those conversations can bring. Yeah. I know the value when I talk to people one-on-one when they're like, that changed everything. Mm. Or the people that on my way out the door would say, I'm most excited for you because you get to help an infinite amount of more people than you did here. And if I think about what you did for me and then how you can scale that out, that doesn't mean I walked out the door and I'm like, cool, this is how I do it. Yeah. But if I'm just okay in that space in the short term, and as long as, and I've been I'm built to do brand deals like this. Yeah. I don't want to do it forever. Yeah. I would like to do as few as humanly possible, only because I know of the perception that it could have and people could start to get, ick on them, etc. Yeah. But I'm a kid that grew up. Have you ever heard of the have you ever heard of the board game? It's like somewhere in between a board game and a kind of a video game, not really. It was called Commercial Crazies. No. It is a VHS. You should, got it. Anybody listening, watching, whatever, look this thing up. You can maybe find a copy on eBay or something like that. It was a VHS and a card game. Got it. And you would stick the VHS in and it would talk to you like, here's what you do. Yeah. And it would do nothing but play you commercials and then basically ask you trivia against them. Got it. And it was like all the most brilliant work in the late 80s and early 90s. Yeah. The FedEx campaign where the guy talked, a mile a minute. Where's the beef? Like all of these iconic advertising. And I was just like, ADD kid.
Yeah.
30 seconds is about as snackable of content as it could get back in the day, and played that game incessantly. Did live sports production, worked in marketing and sales for ESPN, coming up with integrated content ideas for some of the biggest brands on the planet and some of the most high-profile events on live TV, period.
Yeah.
That was my job for 7 years. Yeah. IBM would come in and be like, we have an exorbitant amount of money. We want to do NFL, tennis, and golf. Yeah. What do you got?
Yeah.
And it would be my job to come up with the idea that you can actually execute on air, that's going to hit on their brand messaging needs, keep everybody appeased, and also be cool with whatever our budget goals were for that property for that year. 7 years doing that. Then I took it and I applied it to small businesses and doing content at scale. Mm-hmm. It is an absolute like perfect recipe unintentionally to then take brands that are like, cool, I will pay you this amount of money for this one TikTok to do this thing. Yeah. So in the short term, if it means saying yes to more of those things so I can build the credibility to be like, you don't need me in this.
Yeah.
I get it. I get you're buying an audience too.
Yeah.
But purchase the brain, not the end product. And let's have those conversations. Mm-hmm. But I think just continuing to do it versus being like, you know what? I've decided I'm not. So yes, book, yes, content stuff. Yeah. It has to be multifaceted. Yeah. It's expanding and contracting at the same time, or be like, paid speaking gig, amazing. Get ghosted. Right? And those things are going to happen as well.
Yeah, for sure.
But speaking is 1,000% something I want to lean into. Coaching is 1,000% something I want to lean into. I would like to do as much pro bono, just helpful work at scale as possible. I would like to have my feed be as clean as possible as well, but also partner with smart brands to do cool things, especially if it's going to pay something forward, etc. And challenge my brain that way. So just another place where going back to the syllabus and kind of getting out of your own way, don't just chase individual deals or dollars or start to be like, well, my third quarter projection is looking blah, 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 blah. I am not smart enough to be able to digest that conversation and what should I post today at the same time. Yeah. I have to build the right people around. Like when it comes to building teams, I'd rather be like, cool, y'all at Merrill Lynch that gave me a cold call 15 years ago and you're like, you have a stock plan, you're on my calling list. Do you want us to help you? And I'm like, sure, I have no idea how this works anyway. Like, yes, I would love your help. Thank you. Yeah. Have them working with Knight, who's my agency for the brand deal stuff, literally being like, here are their email addresses. Y'all go and tell me when I need to be concerned or when I need to do something differently. Yeah. And otherwise, I'm just going to go and do and make a mess in the short term. Yeah. But be comfortable in the value that I bring. And if I can bring that type of value, if I can help in the way that I have, if my resume is true, which it is, then I got to be okay to know that there's going to have to be multiple things and I just got to figure it out.
Yeah. I love your answer because I was hoping and asking that you would say something similar, because it was like when Claire and I went out on our own, our whole thing is that we had enough in our superannuation. You know, we most of my career running hotels was in Australia, and Australia has a very great superannuation scheme as part of their system. So we were quite fortunate in that when we went out on our own, we had enough in that to retire on when we could take it out when we were 65. So we went into our business going, we don't need to make money to survive. Actually, we've got a bit of a runway here. We're pretty good. We can go for broke, as they say, and just give it our best. Yep. And it was because of that we didn't have to take the shitty decisions. Yeah. We didn't have to take the shitty deals, and we could choose to play a real long game. Yep. You know, like when I hired Joni, we were only doing LinkedIn stuff, and like everyone was like, "Why did you hire a TikToker? Like, what are we doing?" I was like, "I just feel like there's something here. Yeah. Like, I feel like this is a cool thing. Yeah. We're here to do cool shit. Yep. Let's do this." And so I know that people listen who are listening, especially people who are coming out of corporate and starting business or long careers. So much of their focus is, oh no, I've only got this small runway, hurry, quickly make money. Yeah. And then they inevitably take shitty deals or they get involved in stuff, or they start doing a low level service that they're so much better then. So it's good to hear where you are, but I like the way you phrase it, where you're confident in the value that you offer the world. The way I sort of speak about it is like, I have an audience, the audience tells me what they need, and then I'm able to go and deliver it, which is essentially the same thing. You've got an audience, you're confident with the value you give them because they follow you and they continue to watch and they do all the things. And that confidence, I'm guessing for you, is that you have enough confidence now that the work will come, or the business will come, or whatever it was for that. Is that the thing? And this will be my last question because it looks like Janie's trying to shut me off. But is that the thing? Is it the fact that you've got this audience and you know the value that gives you the confidence to take this long game, or was it just some like self-awareness in yourself that you're just really comfortable with the spot you're at, or is it a combination of everything?
It's probably a combination. Mm-hmm. And it really just does come back to what is the impact that I can have on an individual, and then what that can do for their surroundings. I am super confident in the fact that in any one-to-one situation, and especially at scale in an environment, depending on if that's a auditorium, a department, an audience on a social media platform, when I'm smart about what I'm saying based off of what they need to potentially hear, based on their own needs, not based on what I want to say, what type of impact can I have? I'm super confident that that is a extraordinarily high level of impact that I can have. Whether or not they want to listen for any reason, I can't control that. Yeah. Whether or not they choose to do anything with it, I can't control that either. All I can do is show that potential value, be confident in that I've already seen that play out a lot, both in real life and through just people being like, I got this promotion. Hey, I've never messaged anybody before, and it's been 4 years since I started following you. Can I please tell you how much you've changed my life, kind of stuff.
Amazing.
And it took literally like thousands of those types of things to be like, oh, I think there's something here. Yeah. Literally. Yeah. Because at first you're like, is this really happening? Yeah. Wait a minute, I got to get back to my work email. I got to get out of the, DMs. Like, it doesn't matter how many there. That's not my job. I got to get back over here. Yeah. So being comfortable with that and the broader impact on an individual, and then that impact that can have from a ripple effect on their families, especially as it comes to what are you doing day in and day out for your career? How can I help you feel better than that? I was able to get super clear on what my purpose is. Mm-hmm. I tell anybody, if you're curious as to what your purpose is in the moment, it's almost impossible to be like, outside of being a dad, being a good human being, like those types of things, I think it is extraordinarily difficult to be like, this is my purpose and this is going to be the same when I'm 75 years old. Mm-hmm. But in the moment, if you're looking for your purpose of like, what am I doing with this summer job? What is my purpose here? And you work at an ice cream store, write one sentence at the highest level that explains what you do, but you have to write it in the kindest tone humanly possible. Mm-hmm. I help people make a good decision and have an enjoyable treat that's going to make their day that much brighter. Mm-hmm. That's working in an ice cream shop. Yeah. And you should give yourself that credit. Mm-hmm. Because if you're connecting with the person and you're cool about letting them get a sample and you give them a decent recommendation and your customer service is at a higher level and you're aware of how clean the place is, you're doing all of those things and you should get credit for it. So the way I translated it for myself was I help people do their best work by being the best version of themselves. Cool. I am extraordinarily comfortable with that. I have to be. Mm-hmm. A, because it's real, and B, because it ties back to tangible results. If that's my purpose, if that's what I've already been doing, if I give myself no other credit on this planet outside of being a dad and anything else, it's that's okay. And I should be okay to try to make the most of that for those that it can help. And not everybody is going to want that, needs it, or will want to engage in it in the way that I want to put it out there. But if I'm not okay with that, then there are 1,000 other questions at the bottom of that iceberg that are going to derail everything. So be comfortable and confident with just a super simple sentence about what you do that's written in a kind way towards yourself, and then try to not paint yourself in a corner. And when you do, just remember that progress is always going to be better than perfection, and have fun along the way because life is too short.
I love it. Well, I reckon that's a good place to probably stop. And Joni's going to tell me to hurry up because of it. But I just wanted to say, as closing, well, firstly, thank you so much for coming and being on the podcast with us. I got a lot out of it, actually. It was really good to hear you articulate what I see on all your content, but in a different way. And also just in a longer format as well, which was quite nice. But I also just want to say also from like on behalf of everyone here, like how grateful we are of you because, you know, you took a little chance on Joni and had lunch and invited us all along. And it's become a big part or big reason we were able to come back again to New York and like follow this dream that we've got and help all of us and our team in New Zealand who are all like supporting us, trying to make this part of our journey a success. But like you just taking a chance on a little New Zealand agency to help, you know, you responsibly fire yourself in your last role. Yeah, I really do appreciate you. And I'm like super grateful for you giving us that opportunity and super grateful for you giving us so much of your time.
My pleasure. I will say in closing, you were part of helping me do that, right? The confidence that I had, and because of who you were and because of the connection that I felt originally through what I saw, even if it was just reimagining what it's like to walk down the street in New York City, that felt like the perfect piece to put into, if I walk away and I know that these things are there, I can't control what happens after I leave. But if I know the table is set the right way, then I'm good. And honestly, fortunate on my behalf to have all of those circumstances happen to make me feel like, cool, I'm good. And this is a piece of the puzzle that's needed. So it goes two ways, man.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right.